Thank you so much, Jennifer, and hello everybody to our live audience and the online audience. It's a great pleasure to be here today in this beautiful Faith Pavilion to tell you a little bit more about the Science-Based Target for Faith project. But before doing that, I would really like to give a shout out to all the organizers of the Faith Pavilion to give us an opportunity to be here and to bring us all together to discuss faith and sustainability in this beautiful venue. So thanks so much and kudos to you, team. There you go. So my name is Alberto Pallecchi. I'm the acting director of WRI Faith and Sustainability. The World Resources Institute is, does it work? Next. The clicker doesn't work. Ah, there you go. Thank you so much. WRI Faith and Sustainability is a new initiative of the World Resources Institute. WRI is a global research organization that has been working in the last 35 years at the nexus of development, environment, and trying to bring up practical solutions that are good for the planet, for nature, and also for people. WRI Faith and Sustainability really tries to bridge the gap between the practice of faith-based organizations and the opportunity to develop actions and projects on a more environmentally and socially positive manner. And with that, I also introduce my partner in crime and colleague, Professor Uwe Brandes.
Hello, everyone. My name is Uwe Brandes. I'm a professor at Georgetown University. I'd like to echo Alberto's thanks to everyone for joining us here today in this amazing pavilion in the heart of the COP conference. And it really is an honor and a pleasure to be here with you today and to be a part of this overall movement. I join you from Georgetown University. Georgetown University is a research university based in Washington, D.C. We're the oldest Catholic university in the United States, and our mission has been to cultivate lifelong learning, encourage service to God and humanity, and promote respect for diversity in an age of a global community. So that has been the basis and the point of departure for our participation in this project, and again, it's such an honor and pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you so much, Uwe. So a little bit of the agenda for today. We will have a little bit of some reflections and a short presentation about the project, and then we will hear from two distinguished guests that are already online, connected, and ready to introduce themselves shortly. Professor Gianluigi De Gennaro and Dr. Olivia Wilkinson. I will tell you a little bit more about them later. Obviously, we will have also some time to reflect and discuss and some Q&A. So the project started really from the consideration that worldwide there is a huge population that affiliate with the religion. We are at the Faith Pavilion, so I don't have to explain this too much, but really religion has always been a very important element for what people embrace, values, and protect. We also know that many, if not all, the religions worldwide see the earth as a divine creation that requires responsible stewardship. So we saw the challenge out there in the climate arena, in the environmental arena, and we saw also a growing interest from faith-based organizations to engage more meaningfully around sustainability. At the same time, we saw that there is a lot of untapped potential. There is very little research out there on the nexus between faith and sustainability, how those things interplay. There are clear data and capacity gaps for project planning and implementation on faith-based organizations. And we also find that while there is a lot of commitment, a lot of motivation from some of the major faith-based organizations out there, there has been historically little adoption of evidence-based, science-based commitment from faith-based organizations. Finally, we also recognize that the scale of challenges requires innovative partnerships, bringing everybody together. This is an all-hands-on-deck moment We really need to engage also faith-based organizations to the pursuit of the SDGs and the Paris Agreement, and we are here in this pavilion also for this reason. So the mission of the Science-Based Target for Faith project is quite simple, at least on words, is to advance a global standard for faith-based organizations to manage, report, and measure the greenhouse gas emission in alignment with the science, so in alignment with the Paris Climate Agreement. We have three main goals. Obviously, we start with assets, and we try to understand the emission impact of faith-based organizations through their physical assets globally to inform a science-based approach in the same sort of way that corporates or other organizations has been doing now for decades. The second element is the target setting, obviously. After the, let's say, diagnosis of emissions, we need to develop and pilot faith-specific, science-based targets aligned methodologies for climate mitigation that are specific for faith-based organizations. And we have been doing this on Scope 1 and Scope 2 emission. For those who are not climate junkies, we are talking about direct emissions from an organization operations. Last but not least, it's very important to establish a place where this emission can be monitored, measured, and mapped. And so we try to establish a data hub and develop a data hub for a faith-based organization to report and set and track those targets that they might want to set. I've been mentioning faith-based organizations, but what is an FBO? We have been trying to define this also through our work, and the most accepted definition is that an FBOs is organizations, institutions, actors whose values and mission are driven by spiritual or religious belief. It's quite broad definition. There could be hospitals, there could be ministries, there could be temples, charities, social service providers. So very different type of organizations. And why faith-based organizations? I tried to already explain it a little bit, but faith-based organization owns a very considerable amount of real assets. They are very well positioned because of this to drive real emission reduction, given that very often they have direct control of those assets. We also know that 85% of the population affiliate with the religion, so really the potential to actually drive consumption patterns reductions or behavioral change practices that are aligned with their doctrines is unprecedented. We also know that financial assets are some of the biggest out there, controlled by faith-based organizations, and also there aligning financial investment with 1.5 world can really make the difference to drive change at scale. We also knew that faith-based organizations and in general there are efforts out there to already track emissions. Here in this slide I'm listing some of the great initiatives out there. Some are related to a specific religious denomination. Some are considering a specific geographic location, but there has been efforts from the faith-based world to actually progress on the tracking, measuring, and aligning with the Paris goals. And with that, I pass it to Uwe.
Thank you, Alberto. So what are these faith-based organizations' assets? And we're focused here as part of this project on the real assets. And they can include a number of different kinds of uses, or you can think of it as different kinds of buildings. Obviously, it includes places of worship, but faith-based organizations really extend their control over assets into many different kinds of typologies. And there's some of the types that you would imagine, so residential, offices, education. Georgetown University is a university, so that would qualify as one. But it extends deeper into healthcare, even hospitality. If you think of retreat centers, commercial uses, campuses, and then broader into land assets and vehicle and fleet assets associated with the operations of all of these. So I think this is important for this project because there aren't very many initiatives like this that cover such a wide array of real estate assets. Next slide, please. Oh, yeah. So how many of these assets are out there? We don't know. There's very little data on this. We have done a literature review, and our working understanding is that there are 6 million buildings or properties under the control or in the ownership of faith-based organizations. And just for a moment, imagine all of the buildings in New York City. So if you imagine all of the New York City buildings, multiply that by 6, that's how many faith-based organization-owned or controlled assets we believe there are around the world. And that sounds like a big number on the one hand, but you know, it's a manageable number. And to think and to connect back to Alberto's previous point, it's this many assets that connect with 80% plus of the people around the world. So this is on the one hand, it's an audacious goal of ours to collect data on 6 million assets. On the other hand, by doing so, we have a tremendous global impact. And if you can think and imagine in your mind the country of Mexico, that's approximately the amount of land controlled by faith-based organizations. Next slide, please. So as we said, there's a tremendous impact. 4 of 5 people in the world touch and use these assets. Importantly, because of the nature of the activities of faith-based organizations, many of these assets are on the front line of climate adaptation. This is really important to understand. These are not just random assets in random locations. They're assets that people use, and especially communities at the front line of climate adaptation. FBOs, of course, here we are in the Faith Pavilion. They're leading global advocates on climate change. So there's a mission alignment that is absolutely clear. However, it's an emerging practice to measure and disclose energy and emissions data from these assets. There are other sectors of the economy where there are reporting regimes in place, but that reporting regime, that kind of culture of reporting does not exist in the faith-based organization community. And lastly, access to this data is difficult because of the management structure of many faith-based organizations. So pulling this together is a major, what academics call a collective action problem, and that's a big challenge associated with this project. However, there's lots of good reasons for doing it. So there's a financial impact. You know, the better your ability to manage energy, you can manage energy costs. There's a direct impact there. There's an opportunity to grow the administrative structure and capacity of faith-based organizations. So this capacity extends to other activities of mission advancement. The mission is aligned, as said before, so that's no problem. There's an opportunity to combine goal attainment with education and advocacy. I think this is a really powerful aspect of this project, is that, yes, it's good to measure the data and to create evidence-based solutions, but there's an education opportunity associated with doing that with these assets. Along with that comes building community and ultimately managing risks in the face of climate change. So here we are in our project. We've gotten it off the ground. We've formed this incredible partnership between Georgetown University and the World Resources Institute. We've conducted a preliminary round of research. We have several white papers that are coming out shortly. We've formed advisory groups of experts and developed the mechanisms in order to collect this data from faith-based organizations. We have done a pilot phase, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Next slide, please. And here are just the steps. And we're not going to go through this slide, but those are the steps associated with gathering data. So as we've designed this kind of process and designed this mechanism, this data mechanism, there's a couple of principles that we've embraced. One is to keep this simple. We want people to use this. This is not, we're not in the process of developing some esoteric academic research here. We're trying to create very simple, actionable tools that can be used. We're designing it in a way so that the data can be interoperable. And Alberto showed that previous slide. There are many excellent initiatives underway already. So this is not intended to replace any other initiative. The data associated with any collection effort will be able to flow into this global platform. The tool is extremely flexible, and that relates back to the many different asset types that faith-based organizations own or control. Very important to this project is that we are seeking to position this as a global standard. And that global standard embraces and meets the World Resources Institute Global Greenhouse Gas Protocol. This is very, very important because that's the accounting standard that is accepted worldwide. And the process itself of gathering this data is coupled with a goal-setting exercise and then a disclosure and reporting opportunity. And so this data is not just collecting evidence, but creating the methodology and the steps associated with faith-based organizations to manage their way towards their goals and to disclose and report to the public. So we have some here are some examples of the stakeholders that we've been engaging. You'll hear from two of them here today, the Episcopal Church of the Philippines and St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. And here we are. We're going to welcome our guests.
Hello. Thank you so much for joining Olivia Wilkinson. She's Director of Research at the Joint Learning Initiative, and she has been working with us to develop and deliver one of the pilot studies that we carried with the Episcopal community in the Philippines. And Professor Gianluigi De Gennaro is professor at the University of Bari, and is one of the distinguished members of the St. Peter Basilica Sustainability Project Scientific Committee. Let me start with you, Professor De Gennaro. I'm happy for you to share your screen and present and tell us a little bit more of the work that the St. Peter Basilica is doing to become more environmentally sustainable.
Thank you so much. Thank you for invitation. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I try to share the slides. Just a moment.
We're gonna cut this out in post-production, it's okay.
Again. Okay. Can you see presentation?
Not yet.
Ah, it's a problem.
Ah, there you go. There you go. We see.
Okay, okay. Can you hear me? Okay, I go.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Alberto, for your very kind invitation. Good evening, everyone. Today, for this presentation, I replaced Federico Butera, who unfortunately caught COVID and cannot make this presentation. I hope he is listening to us. I hug him tightly, and I hope I am up to him. I'll tell you about what we are doing inside the St. Peter Basilica Environmental Sustainability Project named Zero Emission. The starting objective of the project was to bring St. Peter Basilica and the connected water to achieve zero net emission before 2025 Jubilee. To achieve this goal, we need to reduce the environmental footprint of Basilica by cutting down impacts relating to material and energy flows, by designing and implementing priority structural and management actions, to carry out a demonstration action, a sort of model for the ecclesial community, to plan concrete action to be practiced with pilgrims during the Jubilee. The president of the fabric of St. Peter, His Eminence Cardinal Mauro Gambetti, to carry forward the project and to guarantee the appropriate scientific basis and the appropriate methodological rigor. He's appointed a scientific committee made up of these experts with different skills, from legal to engineering, from chemistry to physics, from sociology to management, from economy to biodiversity. All very high-profile experts, except me. And the committee is coordinated by the great Walter Ganapini. The committee is organized in 3 working groups. Group 1 deals with the energy flows and monitoring system. Group 2 deals with the material flows, circularity, good practice, economic, financial, and legal evaluation. And first group deals with pilgrims flows, sociological and organizational analysis, communication, tourism, and biodiversity. The group coordinated by Federico has already achieved preliminary deliverables, as you can see, for the energy efficiency of the Basilica, of the Palazzo della Canonica and Palazzo di Santa Marta. Working Group 1 did it in collaboration with Politecnico of Milano, and it must be said that for entire project, the scientific committee suggests to Cardinal Gambetti to activate collaboration with public or private research institutes or with companies in order to effectively carry out the project task. In Working Group 1, for example, we can count on the collaboration of Enel, of the Politecnico of Milano, and the startup Befreeze. For the other task, other collaboration are being activated also in order to involve institution and company as much as possible in such an important project, because it can represent a sort of pilot project for the transition. Another task that involves Working Group 1 is the management of water quality inside the Basilica and other highly frequented environments. In collaboration with the startup Befreeze, we have installed a first monitoring network to control particulate matter, CO2, VOCs, as well as temperature and relative humidity. This network is useful for several objectives, in addition to guarantee good air quality for visitors, which I want to remind you are around 30,000 every day. The network will be useful for reducing virus infection, limiting the number of visitors, also to guarantee safety and flow control, but also to control the impacts on mosaics and frescoes, the impacts caused by visit, but not only, also by other activities connected with the celebration, for example, use of incense or candles, but also problems associated with water condensation or internal temperature. Moreover, the network, depending on the parameter values, can activate the opening of windows or ventilation system. Working Group 2, coordinated by Roberto Morabito in collaboration with the Public Institute Enea. Enea is the Italian National Agency for New Technologies, Energy and Sustainable Economic Development. This group has already carried out an initial analysis of material and energy flows by developing a resource diagnostic of the buildings. Here you can see the main step of the evaluation. First, the data collection and process information, then the identification of efficiency scenarios, the third, the analysis of efficiency scenario, and finally the creation of the resource diagnostic report. By applying assessment based on life cycle assessment, it was possible to develop the first hypothesis of action to reduce impacts. Here I have presented 3 of them. The first, using alternative packaging to plastic, paper or fabric. The second, rethinking water management through more efficient recovery. And the third, activating water-saving awareness actions. What the next? As we can imagine, the 3 working groups are engaged in numerous tasks to achieve the objective. But I thought interesting to present some of these is on which our commitment is focusing. The first is to design and to build photovoltaic system on some roof on the fabric quarter, and in particular in owned areas overall outside the Vatican City. Second is organization of collection of electrical and electronic equipment for the recovery of metals and repair of small appliances during the Jubilee, with the aim of creating a permanent repair cafe. And the third, to design a pilgrim kit for the Jubilee to promote integral ecological practices. I thank you a lot for your attention, and again, Alberto, for the invitation. Thanks.
There you go. Thank you so much, Professor De Gennaro. This was incredibly inspiring, and we hope it can also inspire other organizations out there to come to this level of professionalism in dealing with their climate mitigations commitment. And I want to turn directly to Dr. Olivia Wilkinson, who is going to tell us more about another case study, another of our pilot entities that we have been engaging with the Episcopal Communion in the Philippines.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Hi, good. I'm glad that you can hear me. Thank you very much Uwe and Gianluigi, and Alberto, good to be at the Faith Pavilion, even if from afar. So today, yes, I'm talking about a pilot study that took place with the Episcopal Church of the Philippines. This is a study that we undertook in 2022, and the report is now live this year on the WRI website. So if you want more details from anything that I'm explaining, please just look up the Emissions and Environmental Survey with Faith Actors report on WRI website. So as a pilot project, we undertook a very collaborative process between these different groups. So WRI was supporting the initiative. JLI was present as the research coordinator, and we connected with the Episcopal Church of the Philippines, who then connected us with the University of the Philippines, Los Baños, to bring together the necessary pieces of expertise and capacity that we needed for this project. And so I want to say a big thank you. I believe some of our colleagues in the Philippines are watching right now. Thank you to Floyd and Rachel and Professor Pulhin at the University of Philippines, Los Baños, everyone at the Episcopal Church of the Philippines that was involved in this huge effort, which you will understand how huge an effort it was when I go to explain a little bit more. So as I said, we developed this in early 2022, piloted it, and then did a full rollout of the pilot overall in March and April of that year, leading through to our analysis and write-up and then eventually publication. So the survey was looking at scope 1 and 2 emissions that Alberto has already explained. We had a mix of quantitative and qualitative style questions. Primarily, we were looking at this numerical data to find baseline emission measurements for the Episcopal Church of the Philippines overall in the country. But then we did ask some longer open-ended questions to also understand what existing mitigation activities the churches were undertaking, for example, and what they had been doing to create environmental awareness in churches and various different activities that they'd undertaken. So overall, we looked at energy, water, waste, land, and then these open-ended questions on environmental awareness. And the full survey you can find in the annex for the report if you want to have look at some examples of what those questions looked like. The process to do this type of survey is laborious for these groups that have never done this before, basically. So first off, we had to work with ECP to do an inventory of all their assets to understand even how many buildings did they own, what type of buildings did they own, where did they own these buildings. To give you a picture, the Episcopal Church of the Philippines has around 170,000 members spread across 7 dioceses in 700 congregations around the country of the Philippines. And we had to kind of categorize their assets. So we found that, mostly 67% are churches, but there are also these other types of assets that they had. So churches where they were on a compound and they had other buildings, offices, any other type of building really on that compound. They also have schools. They also have other buildings like agricultural cooperative buildings that we just list as buildings as a kind of general there, but it includes those kind of cooperatives mainly. And then they also have hospitals. And sometimes the hospitals are on grounds that include hospitals and schools as well. So we're starting to get a picture of how diverse the asset range is for the Episcopal Church of the Philippines. And that is just an example of, these denominational and any faith actor group is going to have this huge range of assets. So overall, we got responses from 177 of those assets. Overall, they have over 600. So of course, this is not claiming to be a representative sample of the whole, but we have to remember that this is the first time that ECP was doing a survey like this. And the amount of work that we put in, particularly a few people in ECP, thank you to all those people again, who did training, multiple levels of training, and continued support and mentoring for these different churches and schools to fill in the details of the survey. It took a lot of legwork, basically. And then all that information went back to University of the Philippines, and they did the calculations and analysis to get the final results. So to look at some of the results, we found that overall, per institution, so per the type of asset, schools were emitting the most. So you can see here, actually, churches are not emitting very much on an individual basis. But when we look at the whole of ECP altogether, because churches make up the majority of their assets, it's actually churches, the difference here is schools are 40% and churches are 39%. So they're very close, closely tied, just because they're the majority of the assets. We can also see, though, how these assets are operating very differently in terms of their energy usage. So for churches, the majority of the emissions are coming from energy, from electricity, mostly. When we look at buildings, so for example, those agricultural cooperative buildings, they're using refrigerants much more than other of those types of assets. Hospitals, again, it's energy mainly, but some more in water and refrigerants. And then schools, again, a lot more on the refrigerant side and a lot more on the water side. So you, again, just creating this picture of the incredible range and diversity of the way that energy is being used. Oh, and here's, we've got church and other buildings. So when there's a compound of a church with other buildings, energy still the majority. When we asked these open-ended questions, we did find that a lot of these churches and the schools and hospitals are doing quite a lot already. But of course, there's ways that they can do more. And so we had some use of renewable energy, but a lot of measures already undertaken to reduce energy consumption, minimizing use of AC, for example, different energy saving appliances, rainwater harvesting, the majority are doing that, other mitigation measures that they're undertaking in waste as well, lots of use of recycled materials, composting, and then many of these churches have tree planting programs. Like, they are the groups in their communities that are initiating these types of discussions on land use and how they use their own land. And given that picture altogether, we found that we estimate that in 2021, the Episcopal Church of the Philippines emitted about 9,500 tons. And if you compare that to, other emissions, it's not very much really in the big picture of things. But it's these kind of denominational awareness raising work that they can do and efforts that they're making that are demonstrating Faith Actors' commitment to addressing climate change. So overall, we learned a lot from this pilot, and we definitely learned there are many challenges to implementing a survey of this type with a denomination across a whole country. Record keeping was definitely one piece. People were just not used to necessarily having that audit, essentially, of all their bills and keeping track of their use of water, of electricity, etc., throughout the year, so that you can go back then and fill in a survey of this type. So it's even just getting people used to keeping that type of information that will help in the future. Issues with language translation, the kind of jargon that goes with some of these surveys was difficult. The survey format, we ended up doing this all via paper, which included therefore a lot of data entry. But that was what was feasible and practical in again, the range of types of resources that people have in the churches across the Philippines meant that doing digital for everything was not feasible in this case. The diversity of assets I've already talked about a lot, and then the scope of the data collected. We had some really interesting examples where we have the difference between a big hospital, that always has the lights on, always has all the refrigerants running, to a small church that told us that they put the lights on by running an extension cord to their next door neighbor and plugging it in. And that's the scale of the difference between these different types of assets. But we found that there were a lot of opportunities that they did for the first time have this inventory of all their assets. That was an unintended consequence of this, but a very positive one, to see the scale of the assets for the Episcopal Church across the country, that they do have this emissions measurement now for 2021, and they are hoping to run the survey again and keep having that comparison, maybe not from absolutely year to year, but every couple of years. There was also a huge awareness raising that they did both internally and now are starting to do externally, like the existence of this report can now be used for that external advocacy to other denominations in the Philippines, other within the whole Anglican communion around the world, the demonstration of the ability to do these types of surveys. So I think we have a lot of lessons learned that we do differently perhaps in the future, but the overall result is very positive to demonstrate the worth of these types of surveys. I'm going to leave it there. I hope you all read the report, and thank you very much for having me.
Yes, thanks so much for being so inspiring. We have really just 3 minutes left, but let me say how great it is to actually show that this is possible. It's possible for FBOs organization to actually show commitment and ambition. Do we try to do a couple of questions from the public?
I just want to make one comment. Both of these projects, the data has flowed into this platform, so we're just deeply grateful to both of these projects for participating in the pilot phase. Yep.
If we could quickly bring in back the speaker just to 1 or 2 questions. Is there anybody with a pressing question, since we have a couple of minutes left? Any question? Otherwise, I have many that I want to make myself. Okay, we have a gentleman. I'm going to bring you the mic.
Thank you very much. My name is Vincent Kitsia. I work for UN Habitat. Also work with Professor Federico Butera. We have done a lot of work around the world, and in particular in Africa. And I have to say that this is a discovery for me, because most of the time when you pass through churches, you pass through schools that are owned by the faith group, you don't really imagine the amount of asset that they have. And if we are also talking about the carbon footprint, those assets really produce carbon footprint. So I'm very happy to see that there is also a concern, there is also an effort towards reducing those carbon footprint. My question is just one. What about the new buildings that are coming up? Because what you are doing, you are taking stock of the existing one and trying to basically assessing. You are not even trying to retrofit them, those who may need. But what about the new ones that are being built? Are there a plan to make them net zero carbon, as we have been hearing all around these days?
Yeah, I think what's so powerful about this tool is that it allows for organizations to understand what their cumulative performance is, and to then inform decisions to either make direct resources towards new assets, or, and this is very, very important, think about the ways in which they're managing existing assets and managing them differently. And so without that data, those kinds of decisions are not possible. And understanding the difference between making an impact with a new building or making an impact with existing buildings it's just not possible. And so it's very, very important, critically important, to begin to cultivate this stewardship of data and energy performance associated with all assets.
One final question.
Thank you so much. Super brilliant. Thank you for the work that you do. Very inspiring. Sorry if I missed this. It looked like 177 institutions responded to the survey. How did you identify those institutions? What was that reach out protocol? And did you have a filtering system? Because I imagine there are thousands, if not 100,000 plus faith-based organizations there. Thank you.
Sure, I hope you can still hear me. So this was just with the Episcopal Church, so it's one denomination. So in total, we know that they have just over 600 assets, and they did an inventory. So we worked with basically the national secretariat that oversees all the dioceses, and that's how you reach down to all the dioceses and contact everyone in every church, basically. And so then we had, as I said, it's not representative, and that's because we just basically allowed people who could respond to respond. And that's when we got 177 responses out of the just over 600 possible. So yes, basically you have to work with the structures. You have to work with the denominational contacts and how they contact everyone in their religious network as it is. So the advantage for us was a very enthusiastic group in the Episcopal Church of the Philippines who acutely understand the need for this this work. You know, they have congregations that are regularly year on year directly affected by climate change. And so this is a forefront of their priorities, which certainly made it clear that this was something that they really wanted to do, and they worked really hard to make it happen.
Thank you, Olivia. And just for clarification, that work that Olivia just outlined then flowed into the global platform. And so this gives you a sense of the ambition of this project. We're on our way to what we think is collecting data for 6 million different assets around the world.
And we have, of course, an ambition to continue the project and scale it up also to scope 3, which is not included currently in the methodology that is coming out in a couple of months, but we are willing to continue, and we are open to partner to scale up this project. But I know that I have to close, so I just want to thank Olivia, Gianluigi, also to make the time on a Sunday to connect and share with us. Any closing sentence for you, Uwe?
Just thank you very much. This partnership with the World Resources Institute is greatly appreciated.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, bye.
Thank you, Gianluigi. Thank you, Olivia, Uwe, and also Alberto for bringing this to us and keeping